local government or local municipalities?
Yes, I've been taking that in this larger project of urban living labs. I've been taking that perspective to see, well, what does municipalities, what is their role? And I was interested in it because in some sense urban living labs were kind of perceived as outside regular urban governance, or more related to, let's say, marketization, privatization, or outside urban living governance, urban governance, whether it's municipal or city or local or whatever we want to call it. But it turned out that from the cases that we looked at, we had 50 snapshots in the project, or have 50 snapshots. We found that in very many of the cases, the municipalities were involved. I mean, there were, of course, some more like grassroots initiatives that they didn't have a role, but they were involved. So then we wanted to explore what is then the role of municipalities in this kind of experimental governance that is kind of special. In some sense, we could say it lies outside the jurisdictions of municipalities. It's not part maybe of their core concerns. So we wanted to look at that, and then we found that in the analysis that they had different roles, and we outlined 3 different roles. Well, we can say 4. The 4th one was non-involvement, really, or we didn't call it no involvement because, I can't go into that, but non-involvement. But then the strongest role of the municipality was in being a promoter. A promoter actually of urban living labs. We could see this often through supporting funding, but maybe also applying for funding from other levels of government, and promoting often on issues that were a bit closer to their key areas, and that can of course vary a little bit between local governments. What are their core areas? I mean, Swedish municipalities have a lot of areas that they're responsible for, but we noted, for example, in the UK that municipalities has not such a strong role, right? So of course, what was core, it's different, and probably for Australia it is different as well. But so they were sometimes promoters, but many times they were also enablers. So more like sitting back, thinking this could be good for the community, for the local, for the citizens to do this. So we'll enable it in different ways by supporting it, maybe providing some, let's say, buildings or land or something like this. But then we also saw that they sometimes could be more like partners. So they, together with other stakeholders like private businesses, other organizations, scientific organizations, for example, they went in more as a partner and had a partnership with a very fairly clearly defined role. What was their role in this urban living lab? So the kind of conclusion that we make here is that the municipality can have very many different roles, and they can engage in various roles. So we can say that the paper that we've written on this then goes into all the snapshots and describes it in a little bit more detail, exactly examples of this, what they're doing. So I think that can be useful to understand new types of governance that we're seeing emerging in societies. Another thing that we noted with this work is that although the countries that we study, UK, Netherlands, Austria and Sweden, actually have fairly different local governance systems they're actually representing 3 different kinds of local governance structures. Like Austria is a federal state, so it has a different kind of structure. Netherlands, Sweden it has a lot of local autonomy. and it's a bit neo-corporatist, so it's used to working with stakeholders, where the UK has this other form of decentralization, which is, kind of more weaker local government. But even though they are so different, we found that in all the urban living lab cases which we took from these countries, so the 50 cases we have, they're spread pretty much over these countries, that we found urban living labs in all the categories. So we found that also UK local governments could be promoters, they could be enablers, and not just partners, so to speak. So we found evidence that these different understandings could be useful. So we were happy about those results in the sense that.
Was there any evolution? Do people sometimes start as enablers and then move to promoters?
Well, that's a very good question, because this is what we saw, that as urban living lab as they evolved, and it also depended on when you made the study, so to speak, because when you do study an urban living lab, if you go in and study it, you do it in that one time. And some projects were actually quite long, but as urban living labs are normally a few years, but we did find that there were some that were long and they were a little bit more difficult to define, and we did see evidence that the role changes, yes. So you could be a promoter in the beginning and then kind of more leave it to other actors, or the role could change so that you were even going totally out of the collaboration and sort of being a non-participant in it, from the municipal point of view, if the project could run by itself, so to speak. So those roles, this is just kind of a framework to think about different ways that municipalities can be involved, so we couldn't really see very clear lines.